it seems to me, uh, from raw material or from my perspective on an integration of Western metaphysics, transpersonal psychology, and East-West, mysticism or religion, that you can't really explain the present world condition without understanding the two paths of polarity for soul evolution in cosmic plan. And that's a matter of faith or a matter of unprovability. It's coming from the raw material. But, Buddhism, Hinduism both talk about left-hand path and higher dimensional asuras. But transpersonal psychology doesn't seem to venture that far.
Yeah, I mean, they are already obviously stretching the limit, as it were, into sort of trans-egoic states, let alone, well, I mean, obviously getting into shamanism is the link. I mean, shamanism, rightly so, is the necessary ancient technology, spiritual technology that needs to be integrated, interwoven into the current scientific, psychological, spiritual, if you will, paradigm. It's the existence of entities beyond this plane of existence.
Yeah, but
needs to be.
Yeah, you're meaning that the view of multidimensionality, right?
Sure.
But Buddhism and Hinduism and Western metaphysics are profoundly multidimensional in their view.
Sure, but it tends to be less of a... If you're an Easterner, I think it's easier buy-in than if you are a Westerner, because most Westerners don't buy into the Western esoteric or tradition. I mean, most... I always bring up Ken Wilber.
Yes.
Because Ken Wilber presents, arguably the most encompassing, integral Western worldview.
Yes.
Well, which is it's not even Western, it's kind of integrated already, but he still doesn't get the shamanic, esoteric, extra dimensional nature of reality.
Well,
He's not quite there.
Well, there in England, in the UK, there's one fellow who's the public proponent of a reinterpretation of Buddhism without its mystic elements, without the whole notion, without a heavy focus on karma, reincarnation, multidimensionality. You see, I mean, the esoteric that you're attributing to shamanism is not the exclusive domain of shamanism. It's well understood in esoteric, in Buddhism and Hinduism, which are by their nature esoteric, and esoteric Christianity and esoteric Islam, actually, all of them. Meaning, all of them understand a morally polarized, multidimensional cosmic structure. Multidimensional, morally polarized cosmic structure, and thus plan of soul evolution. Meaning, Buddhism, Hinduism, you have devas and asuras, two higher realms of the six realms. But nobody in the West, as you say, seems to want to work with that.
Except for the guys who do the channeling.
Well, channeling, you see, channeling, the New Age, the community and the New Age groups that do channeling, they have no problem with multidimensionality, and many of them have no ideological problem with morally polarized higher dimensional groups and beings and lineage. They don't have a problem knowing there are positive and negative ETs. Many of them. Some of them are very confused about it, and some of them say, no, they're all evil, or no, they're all good, which is, there's not one human tradition, indigenous, religious, mystical, metaphysical, ever, that I've ever found, that indicates a non-polarized or unimoral, single morality, higher dimensional community. Meaning, every single one of the traditions that talks about multidimensionality and higher dimensional beings understands or has the spiritual view of moral polarization, positive and negative. Every one of them, except for some of the New Age groups and military-related groups that say they're all evil or they're all good. But those traditions, or the New Age groups that have no problem with multidimensionality, or even moral polarity of higher dimensional groups, positive and negative, don't have any practice lineage associated with them, nor do they actually understand third-dimensional life as a portion of needed development along a multidimensional, seven-dimensional or multidimensional path. They don't have that either, as Buddhism and Hinduism somewhat does, and the raw material in Western metaphysics somewhat does, or does a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The New Age groups don't have that. So you got a lot of people touching parts of the elephant and identifying by the portion they're in contact with. Actually, seems to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the New Age has many deficiencies: lack of systematic thought, lack of rational thought, lack of male, strong, organized, some ways hierarchical structure. And obviously there's a lot of, again, what Wilbur said, boomeritis is kind of like solipsism, like, okay, this is the way I think it is, and that's the way reality works. It's sort of this refusal to admit things outside of your ken.
Right.
But that's all fear, I mean, it is a terrifying thing to acknowledge that there are evil entities of the fifth density who are like archons and all that, like it's terrifying.
Yeah, well,
so.
Well, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said something like, if you're not going to finish the path, better not start. And so a little knowledge is much more dangerous than none at all in the metaphysics. And so the people who come to realize morally polarized or I just call it morally polarized, moral in the sense of with love or without love. Morally polarized higher dimensional lives or groups or beings don't understand the nature of protection and vulnerability. We're not. There are certain things there are laws to creation that restrict or limit the contact the non-physical negative entities can have with humans.
Yes.
And so there's something called the law of free will. But there's a metaphysics to to the basis of vulnerability and the basis or non-vulnerability or protection. Those are not necessarily understood by people who stop midway, hearing about archons or reptilians or negative ETs or demiurge.
Actually, maybe you can talk about that a little bit. So I don't actually quite understand what you mean. I mean, I have my own interpretations of vulnerability and protection, but maybe you can say a little bit about that.
Sure. So the issue is, what are the metaphysical basis of vulnerability versus spiritual protection against higher dimensional negative entity intervention? Basically, basically like negative ET contact or demonic attack. Basically, we are as vulnerable as we have 7 chakra blockages and distortions. As much as we have 7 chakra blockages and imbalances, and as much as we have mind-spirit distortions in psychology, psychological woundedness, and wrong view, and more subtle spiritual distortions associated with incorrect practice or harmful technique in practice, and limiting views or limited wrong view of spirituality and how we put that into practice, and lower chakra blockages associated with basically typical psychopathology. To the extent that we
fear, ignorance.
Yeah, to the extent that we have attachment to fear and self-pity, sorrow, and anger, irritation, aggression. To the extent that we have any blockage in any of the 7 chakras, to the extent that we have any distortions whatsoever in mind and spirit complexes, there is vulnerability. And so, in Buddhism, right, the 3 poisons are grasping, aversion, ignorance, which is basically greed or desire, which is not unhealthy at root, but, leads to further entanglement and can be helpful and can be harmful, desire. Then there's aggression or aversion, and that's basically anger, complex tendencies of mind, and then ignorance or fear and suppression of process and unwillingness to feel and see and know. To the extent that those are strong, we are vulnerable. And so negative entities, we just went over this today in session 80 in the Raw Material Law of One. What is the basis for negative ET attack on Carla during the sessions or before and after the sessions? It was basically the desire to steal metaphysical power or light from her by ending the contact or limiting her radiance, by accentuating distortions in physical, mental, or spiritual complexes, meaning 7 chakra blockages. So to the extent that she had pre-incarnative illness and injury and chronic problems with body, that was a continuing source or continuing area for exploitation by the negative entity. And but in terms of mind spirit, because the group was very harmonious in love and kindness to each other and honesty, commitment to truth and harmlessness, they were not much vulnerable in mind and spirit complexes for nearly all of the contact. So, so we are as vulnerable as the work we've neglected. We are as vulnerable to negative ET attack or demonic attack or possession or negative entity overshadowing or anything like that, to the extent that we have neglected development of love and wisdom.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so
they're all catalysts for us to step up to the plate, I guess. This is obviously if you are into this kind of thing, it's a challenge, I guess. The more evolved you are, the more light you can embody, then you're going to get more attention, obviously, which in turn gets you to generate even more light, because then that's more even more shit to compost.
Yeah, I mean, Roth said that the intensity of light in their group, which was associated with their purity of motivation, purity of positive, moral motivation, intention, meaning they really, really wanted to walk in love and wisdom, in balance, in harmlessness, in truth, for the benefit of all, self and other. They really were committed to that and committed to the contact. Because of that, there was a great intensity of light that attracted the high-level negative entity. And so, and that then provides them, as you say, with more catalysts to continue on their way, basically to learn to love evil. It doesn't mean like it. It doesn't mean follow it. It means wish all beings well, even if they're choosing evil and deliberate, harm and control. And you're absolutely right. It's a great catalyst, being in this world of mixed polarity, where the leadership is primarily service to self, and pretty skilled. Some of them are very skillful, some of them less so. And the more we go along the path, the more high-level catalyst comes to us. Certainly, the more intensity of light, the more attractive to the negative entities we become. Yeah. But there are many ways of working with that also. And ultimately, Ross said, love is the greatest protection. And I think that's really the key, but it's not a stupid love. It's not idiot compassion, as Trungpa said. It's basically love supported by a very serious commitment to truth, like you write on your website, Love of Truth. The love of truth and the commitment to truth and honesty as the basis of love or harmlessness. That's very protective.
Yeah, it's a very well. This is why. This is a game, right? This is the highest levels. I guess what I want to talk about is vulnerability here, because in order to grow, we have to be willing to look at our stuff. You see, and that's kind of like we want to be. I guess I'm speaking from my own view here. We want to be perfect. We want to exhibit all these perfectionistic kind of ideals but which sometimes we're just not up to it, and sometimes we need to look at we need to let the stuff surface.
Yeah.
And going through those cycles, but still being in a container of trust and openness to love and light is where the rubber meets the road, right? Because that's growing. It's not just living a false, super ego kind of spiritual life. It's real evolution. Like life is going to be turbulent, but it's turbulent, but it's evolving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in the surrender to allowing the arising of the shadow, or bringing light to the darkness, or allowing catharsis, or not blocking emotional flow, not suppressing the painful and the confusing and the upsetting within our own psychology that may come to consciousness. Forgiveness and kindness is essential. And so to me the there's a healing cycle that begins with the willingness to allow sensation in the body, and allow thoughts and feelings in mind, and the willingness to take responsibility that I have created them or co-created them, and a willingness to accept mind-body process as is, and then understand more and more deeply how this came to be, but it's got to be capped, I think, by forgiveness of self and other. But you see, there's a lot of forgiveness that's impossible in a materialistic worldview. Like this metaphysical view is, before we were born, we consciously chose parents and family, and birth conditions, and body and gender, and all sorts of things. It's called Program Catalyst by Ra. And so, how can you come to forgive abusive parents, or living in a tyranny of some nation, without considering the idea that I knew what I was getting into before I was born. I chose it, and there is a karmic deservedness too, and that's called, modern view. People think, oh, that's blame the victim. Well, you can say it's blaming, but I'm not blaming. If I say I chose my abusive parents before birth, if I didn't have, but if I had, or abusive partner, or attack from Mr. Agent Smith and his coterie, I am responsible for the psyop done to me by negative activity in past lives and the present, and ignorance and neglect of blockages and inadequate love wisdom. I don't feel blamed. I feel responsible. But I also feel gratitude that some karma was exhausted. And I also come to know self better by considering the multi-incarnational basis. And it doesn't make me feel better than anybody. And you can say that you can say, oh, it makes you feel better, that's why you believe such a thing. Well, a lot of people would feel a whole lot worse considering such a thing, like multi-incarnational karmic responsibility for abusive parents and, attack. But if there's no self-blame, if there's responsibility without self-blame, and no interest in self-punishment, and a basic goodwill to oneself, and the appreciation of forgiveness. Yeah, I fucked up, but I didn't know any better, and I'm getting my just desserts. And there's some kind of perfection to it, and I don't feel that's there's no proof to any of this. There's no proof, so nobody can say I know you're lying, I know you're self-deceived, because they don't know what I say isn't true. Absence of proof is not proof of absence. Absence of proof is simply absence of proof. There is no proof of absence. You can't prove there is no God, just as the, deists cannot prove there is. Same thing with karma, reincarnation, and multidimensionality. Cannot be proven,
Mm.
and cannot be disproven. And there are a lot of
Well,
shallow-minded
this-
people who don't know that.
What you're saying is actually a pretty, I just insight in the Buddhist tradition obviously comes to mind. It's kind of like to say that everything is happening for a reason, and it's your karma coming back to be processed. Actually takes a certain level of sitting with it, which is meditation.
Well, there,
And
yes,
yeah,
but
that really takes some. It takes training. It takes training to be able to get to a level like that consistently.
yes, that's true. It takes a quiet mind. I mean,
It does.
that's what samadhi is. You see, here's an interesting link. In Buddhism, the three foundations really are Shila, Samadhi, Prajna. Shila means virtue, morality, discipline. It's basically not much different than the Ten Commandments. Panchashila, five Shila, Theravada, Pali text, Pali canon, the earliest tradition they all follow. All later Buddhists follow five Shila, Panchashila. You probably know. Don't kill or harm bodily, and against lying and false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, and against stealing or taking what's not given, and then against harming self and other by sex or intoxicants. Right?
Mm.
So that's Panchashila. Shila is the basis of Samadhi. Samadhi is the basis of Prajna, wisdom or insight realization. And so you ain't going to get to a clear mind if you're harming self and or other.
Mm.
You can't get to Samadhi or spaciousness of mind or, mind held steady in the light or silence of mind at a steady state, as Ross says.
Mm.
You can't get there when you're hurting self and other consistently or aggressing against self and or other. Lying to yourself or self-punishing. Lying to others or tricking them for gain. Harming self and other with drugs or sex. That's not the same as using drugs and sex. It's harming by sex and drugs. If there's active harming, which includes defense mechanism, emotional avoidance, and being dishonest with oneself, to the extent that we're not being honest or kind, morality or shila is weak, and therefore samadhi is weak, and therefore insight into the subtle or multidimensional, non-physical, multi-incarnational karma and all that insight is not going to happen much. To the extent, as you say, that the mind isn't trained or doesn't know samadhi, doesn't know stillness and quiet. Because the mind is still upset with lower chakra blockages that have not yet been healed, which are very workable. But the person has to be willing to face the music, which may be a very sad song. Like, oh, 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 like that.
It takes many lifetimes, Scott.
Well, you're not too far away.
It takes many, many lifetimes.
We're all on the same... Yes, of course. There are very few people who have a taste and a love for truth. Like you wrote, love of truth. Love of truth, yeah. Love, and love truth. That's the way. And we're all imperfect. We all have 7 chakra blockages, it seems to me. We all have distortions in mind, body, spirit. Okay. But we just keep going. I'm not against, critical of anything you're saying. I totally agree. But we do what we can do, right? But it's just surprising to me how few transpersonal psychologists and so-called experts in the field are willing to venture into the multi-incarnational, multi-dimensional perspectives that are right in front of them in Buddhism and Hinduism. Every Advaita Vedanta teacher, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, everybody, including Gautama Buddhism and all the great Tibetan teachers and Zen teachers and Theravadan teachers, everybody knows multidimensionality and multi-incarnational karmic reality. Everybody knows that. Everybody accepts it. Demons and ghosts and angels and positively oriented invisible rishis, the community of rishis, everybody knows. What the hell's wrong with the Western mind?
Well, Steiner. Don't forget Steiner.
Mm-hmm. Right, Theosophist. Yes.
He actually is probably the best representative of what you need as a Western thinker, sensitive to the multidimensional reality.
Oh, I totally agree. Steiner, anthroposophy, theosophy, some Western channels absolutely are aware of that. But in organized transpersonal academic traditions and fields and institutes, it's a very funny thing that they don't really want to go there. The whole reality of higher dimensional benevolent and malevolent beings and what that means for cosmic plan and right hand, the existence or possibility of right hand and left hand paths of evolution. They just don't want to go there. Wonder why.
Well, they're trying to build respectability. So I guess that's
Right.
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. Every time I step into I faced certain boundaries as progressive as the program that I did, the philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness program. But yeah, I mean, start to talk about psychic ability. You kind of lose and sort of extra dimensional entities. You lose people. Just people. Yeah, they just.
But the question is, why are they not even looking at it? In fact, you can't understand. You really can't understand oneself. One, in my view, one can't understand oneself. One can't understand others, or society, or this world, or this dimensional life, without a spiritual view that includes multidimensionality and multi-incarnational karmic stream. You can't get it. And in fact, Gautama said the same thing in the Pali Canon. You really can't get his teaching if you don't understand or accept karma and reincarnation.
Well, you see, I have a sort of experiences of this because I've sat in, I was lucky enough to spend some time in the College of Psychic Studies and, had enough experiences with channels and sort of intuitive insights into, okay, this is an extra dimensional entity that has some wisdom to convey to me. And I don't know, like people don't, you can say as much as you want, it's all theory, but what they need are visceral experiences of these encounters, which,
right.
It's rare. It's hard to get these experiences unless you're in the right place and, quality channels. And
yeah, well, you have to also, I mean, channels can help with a vicarious experience of multidimensionality and help develop. One can learn or get some firsthand self-validating experience or catalyst. But in terms of a direct paranormal experience, the gateway is meditation. And there are many, many traditions and techniques. And most Western people and most people in the world today, even interested in New Age, don't want to submit mind to meditation. And that's because it's painful. And
it takes discipline.
It takes, I think, to me, I mean, once upon a time somebody said to me, oh, you have a lot of discipline. And I really said, no. I'm just very honest about how much suffering I'm in. I'm just honest about how much pain is in this mind. Meaning, I know I'm in a lot of pain and confusion. And I know that thinking about it doesn't get me out because I can see the pain is not much reduced by thinking or study. It's only reduced by very subtle catharsis that comes through meditation. And for me, it was anapanasati or Buddhist breath meditation, mindfulness practice. And to me, that's just honesty. That I'm in a lot of pain, and I made it, and thinking and study and talking about it doesn't really get it gone. It doesn't really cathart or release the pain for me. And I think, honestly, that's probably the case for most everyone. And the only thing that I know is working, because I can tell, is mindfulness practice or meditation. Formal practice. Very formal. Strict in some way. Not meaning not to feel good, but to go through and keep doing it until the pain clears, which it does, and it will, and then comes insight. And I think it's dishonesty and a fear of pain and low self-esteem that blocks people from jumping into meditation and then from knowing the multidimensional. It's not really being honest about how much pain they're in mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Mm. Well, half of it is so okay. So this is what I've been also observing. It's the Western mind tends to want quick fix, right? I mean,
Right.
everybody wants quick fix. I wouldn't just point it to the Western mind. Easterners now are all about quick fix too.
Sure.
But especially in sort of this NorCal circles that I've
Right.
been witnessing,
Right.
psychedelics are being used as a replacement for
Meditation.
proper
Right.
week-long meditation.
Right.
No drugs, just air and food, and silence. And I mean, I have no doubt that psychedelics can help cathartic, in your words, deeply rooted psychological material. But there's no
Yes.
substitute for just working with the mind on mind.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but again, cultural, big waves of norms and just sort of attention deficit, instant distraction
Right.
culture,
Yes.
swipe left, Tinder, Facebook, checking every 30 seconds. It's part of the collective. I don't know what you want to call it. Collective distraction.
Yeah. It's the the addiction du jour. The addiction of our age is mental distraction, in some sense. Yes. I mean, psychedelics, I think, can be very helpful in illumining or coming to certain realizations and some catharsis. Yeah, but psychedelics is not a spiritual path, actually, because there's a lot of self-deception that happens by the chemical alteration of brain chemistry and neural patterns and all that. It can be very helpful, but it is, in my view, it is simply not a path, because of particularly the agitation and the continuing attachment to thought associated with drug experience, psychedelic, even as in a ritual ceremonial way. The person is still thinking. The person is still conceiving. The mind is not still. It isn't samadhi. There is some level of fashioning of thought form, and there are various levels of controlling mind, body, spirit process that the person is unaware of. I mean, real samadhi is called out of control, in my view. Real samadhi, the only thing being controlled is the steady direction of attention to the object of concentration.
I guess there's also something to be said about the plant spirit, and actually this is an open-ended question, because I've done ayahuasca ceremonies now, and I've also had very interesting blending of experiences with sort of getting into just witnessing, awareing, non-dual, samadhi, approximations, but also being receptive to what the plant spirit, which I sometimes regard as these plants are very ancient.
Yeah.
So they contain a lot of wisdom. They've been around for a long time, and variously, it feels like a lot of the messages are very ecological. Sort of like we have to be embodied as the body of Gaia, and I actually have appreciated a lot of the messages and insights that I've got from some of these ceremonies.
Yes, of course. Those may be very transformative messages. But reception of a teaching is not transformation of the 7 chakra field. Meaning, it's a change in view, and it may lead to some change in the totality of 7 chakra field of self. But a particular message is not the same as the demonstration or willingness to be completely uncontrolling of deep mind process. and to unveil oneself to particularly the first level, which is psychopathology, all the pain that we carry, the psychic pain. I mean, messages are good, of course, but what I'm saying is I don't think that does I think that there's deeper levels of working that are not possible by simply receiving messages. That don't happen with reception of message or truth, teaching, receiving teaching. I mean, there are a lot of people who've gone to satsang and darshan and dokusan and all sorts of things, and they still have self-harming patterns. Or we can say that we all do. But it's a degree of, to me, what's critical is surrendering to the process. But it's not a process led by a plant spirit or a psychedelic, but it's the process of allowing the deep mind to fully emerge into consciousness. And what I can call it fierce non-doing.
I love it. Fierce non-doing. Yeah,
fierce non-doing. Because it's not manipulation. It's actually stripping off very, very subtle and deep, pervasive levels of controlling body-mind process. We are so controlling of body-mind process, it seems to me, much more than we realize. I mean, why can't somebody sit down and concentrate on the breath or something for an hour at the first start? Why? Why is it hard? Because the mind is filled with thought or distraction and can't concentrate. Why? Because all of that's been fashioned as some kind of coping mechanism. Coping means to face life or something, but the mind is so disorganized. What's wrong? To me, all of that is avoidant. It ultimately is avoidance. It's highly avoidant. Restlessness or mental distraction as emotional avoidance, as the modern defense mechanism.
Yeah, conditioning.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like go into your room and immediately turn on the radio or the TV. Why? Because I don't want to hear my own thoughts and feelings. Why? Because it's too painful. Well, it's not too, but you call it too painful. It's painful. But how are you going to be free of it without releasing it? You actually can't. And to me, there are a lot of... It's a dishonesty to think that we can release internal pain of body-mind, particularly mind, emotional, without allowing it to come through in a dark night of soul or catharsis process. I think there are many traditions in psychology that understand that you can't be free of it unless you've allowed it to come up and through. And a lot of people, as you say, want a quick fix. I mean, quick fix is great, but it just doesn't work. The point is, people think I like a quick fix too, but it just isn't. It's fake. If you think it works, it's self-deception. It may work in some way for some time, but if you're really sensitive to pain or your mind, you'll find that there's still a lot unhealed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with everything you're saying. It's just, I think a lot of people, I mean, it's natural. We don't want to feel pain. But the big irony is that you can't be free of pain by avoiding pain. You can only be free of pain by allowing it to come through and accept it and understand it and come to deep knowing of one's process and forgiveness. And that's guided by love, wisdom. Commitment to kindness and honesty. To me, that's the only true way of deep mind or psychological healing. There are no quick fixes. A quick fix is inadequate. It just doesn't work in a deep way for deep healing, as far as I can see. As far as I can see with people in my own experience, it doesn't work. It's a temporary, very limited fix. And so everybody knows if you want something great, great effort is needed. So if you want the great achievement of a peaceful heart, great effort is needed. Seems to me.
It's true.
All right.
It's true.
We're in total agreement.
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
I mean,
what do you see in terms of what do you what is the current Northern California transpersonal psychology community focus these days? I went to CIS between 87 and 91, and so or 88, 91, 87, and they had already lost the kind of metaphysical core that came with Haridas Chaudhuri and Aurobindo and Ram Dass, and even Bailey. They were studying that stuff when the school first started. They already lost that, but the PCC program you're talking about sounds like they're bringing a little bit of that back, but it sounds like they're looking, there's a reliance on psychedelics as path, or some view that that's a easier path, but I don't think so.
Big question. I mean, obviously, okay, so this is Ken Bok's opinion, but the social justice warriors have taken over. The angry left has taken over, the one with authority problems.
Right.
And
they all
too much touchy-feely.
Yeah.
Not enough logical, rational, not enough trashing out. We lack strong and kind male energy. We lack that a lot here. Yeah. And I say that with a sort of, it's a tough environment to be, to want to push some of that around. And I've certainly had my own challenges with holding my own, as it were. But still, CIIS remains a wonderful font of knowledge and holds a lot of wonderful tradition and such diversity and such caring for soul and caring, just caring. I mean, therapy as a way of being. I just see all these 20-year-olds, and they're just lovely people. Honestly, they are attuned and intelligent and sensitive, and they're healers. They are the healers. They are the ones who are so needed in our world, but they have a hard time finding jobs and making wage.
Yeah.
But that's the way things are currently on this planet, as it were. They probably aren't the worst off in relative terms to the degree of suffering that goes on in the planet.
Right.
But certainly things are evolving here on the West Coast. We've got a lot of psychedelic research going on with the multidisciplinary association, psychedelic studies. You've got IONS, the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is trying to push ESP research. You've got Dean Radin, and you've got I'm very happy about Sheldrake, and Sheldrake is just Rupert Sheldrake's just so crucial in sort of stepping away from a Newtonian paradigm.
Right.
And now, California still is some amazing mix of energies here. Sort of this things that go on in festivals as well, like Burning Man and all these different festivals. Sure, there's a lot of psychedelics involved, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of generation of fields going on there with sort of pushing the collective
Yeah.
limit, boundaries, possibilities that have no doubt in my mind that create new timelines for the collective. And timelines that are not rooted in scarcity thinking or fighting or sort of just wallowing in the mud. They are very exciting. We live in very exciting times. I have no doubt about that. I see. I'm not in any way for a catastrophic kind of mindset as much as I was a couple of years ago anymore. I think, we still face a lot of challenges, but we'll get through them. We will evolve. We are in a lot of evolution here. I've just been actually studying a lot of blockchain technology, and the wave of disruption, quote unquote, evolution, innovation in the various fields in which blockchain is going to impinge on, legal, financial, economic, is going to be tremendous. Yeah, and that's really real technology that's being deployed as we speak.
Have you heard or read about China's state embrace of Bitcoin for the national bank or for the people's financial situation over there? It seems to me, from what I've read, that China wants to make good use of Bitcoin as
I don't know about that one.
National policy level.
I have to check that one out.
I see. Yeah, you might just check that. That China.
I read about.
Yeah. Once they want to use it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I also read about this China with this social credit scores and
right.
Now the AIs are getting involved, and it's wild. The future is wild with neural links and the AIs, man. The AIs are just going to. The AIs are going to be the invisible, but ever-present force in our society.
Maybe
from this point onwards. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the circles in Northern California that are, I imagine, pro-technological. Does anybody understand New World Order transhumanism?
New World Order transhumanism. That thread of chipping and all that.
Well, yes, of course. Neural net chipping, basically mind-machine blend hybridization, chimera, gene splicing, basically, human augmentation, brain, mental function augmentation. Does anybody see the long-term plan that may not be so benevolent to it? Maybe not.
It's a good question. I have not interacted in those circles.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll keep my eye out for it.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem to me that technology will save humanity, and human augmentation by computer-machine interface will only enable the same psychodynamic patterns or the moral failings of humanity. Frankly,
yes.
You're not gonna. It's like you say, you can't legislate morality. You can't hybridize by mind machine or brain AI morality either. You can't.
I agree.
So.
I agree. Technology is a force multiplier.
Right.
And
right.
I pray that the technology is used by the evolved and the wise and the compassionate. Yeah, I think that's what we need. We need the symbiotic intertwining of ecological and technological.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think we need love. We need morality.
We do.
We need,
We do.
we need to follow the golden rule. Don't treat others the way you don't want them to treat you. You know? Do good. Do good. Don't do
Yes.
harm. Learn ahimsa.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
to me,
yes.
you know, all of human technology is simply as beneficial as the morality of its usage. And nobody wants to hear morality. It's a very fuddy-duddy kind of term, I think. It evokes, you know, the church, one-room church in the Midwest or something, talking about morality, or hellfire brimstone preacher. But
Yes.
actually, it really just means love and wisdom. It really just means harmlessness and a commitment to truth and benefit for all, which is just what you're saying. But if people don't really consciously, I think, consider it or contemplate what morality is, will fall into harmful ways, as civilization has.
Yes. Actually, interestingly, I've been getting into some Vajrayana recently, and again, they've got this love and wisdom theme coming up with the Vajra and the Dorji.
Sure. Wisdom and compassion.
Yeah, it was just a wonderful. You know, the same two important themes crop up in these two really advanced, in my mind, teachings.
Well, it's the basis of Bodhisattva Pada, Bodhisattva Magga, Bodhisattva Path, is wisdom and compassion. Wisdom and compassion is fifth chakra, fourth chakra, the blue-green center. As far as I know, it's the way that wisdom or truth and honesty and discernment and love, kindness, harmlessness, the will to help self and other, how those lead the path or fuel the path that goes through psychological self-healing, spiritual healing, and then insight and, you know, 7 chakra full self-transformation. Love and wisdom and compassion lead the way. That's the salvation. Our salvation is wisdom and compassion, meaning from bondage to liberation, or confusion to clarity, or suffering to wellness, from dukkha to sukha. Really, it's the path. Wisdom and compassion, definitely.
So, Scott, since we last did our last round of interviews in, what was it, 2012? Many years ago,
20,
I guess.
It might have been 14, but yeah.
Okay.
Whenever.
What has sort of transpired for you in observing the move to fourth density? Sort of a big question, but
yeah, it's a great question.
What are your viewpoints here?
In resonance with something Ross said, that here at the end times of the third density cycle of evolution, there will be an intensification of polarization of both paths, of people on both paths and groups, meaning the good get better and the bad get worse. Those that are committed to love wisdom more and more fully know and live love wisdom, and those that are committed to power through control and force, domination and deception, get more skillful on their path or more committed too. And I think that's what we see in America. America is really ground zero for Armageddon. You see, this is the time of apocalypse. And apocalypse means revelation, nothing more. It's the apocalypse of Armageddon. The apocalypse of Armageddon means the revelation of the third density end of cycle time, in which the two paths of benevolence and malevolence are more and more clearly evident for all to see. And I think the two ways are more and more evident for all those who wish to see. And those that are committed to wisdom and compassion, and those on so-called positive path, and those that are committed to control through domination, deception, force and lies, manipulation, ... Those on both paths are getting stronger in their commitment and activity on those two paths, those two ways of living. and uh, there are only those two ways of those two sets of values. They're basically spiritual values: the value of love, wisdom, the value of control through force, deception for increasing selfish power. There are only those two ways. And the people who are rejecting both, this is what Ra calls, there's something called the efficient use of catalyst, which is using one's life experience for continued development. But there are two ways, right? Like there are two roads you can go on, but there's still time to change the road you're on. Stairway to heaven. And so the people who are not the people who want to keep their head in the sand or in their device 2x2 screen are becoming further and further mentally fragmented, and they are self-primitivizing, self-primitivization. Vladimir Putin talked about this, how society that relativizes moral values ultimately is primitivizing or making itself more primitive. And primitive in the sense of animalistic, not in the sense of indigenous groups having something wrong with them, no, but animalism, which means derationalization. So there's a lot of, there's a cover of Time magazine said something like, "Is truth dead?" No, truth is not dead, but human capacity to rationally ascertain truth is degrading. And that's part of the negative thought. That's the age of deception. Orwell talked about. In an age of deceit, in a universal age of deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act.
Yes.
And he knew, because he was Eric Blair and he was with the Secret Service over there. He knew the Illuminati plan for the future. And so humanity is being animalized by cultural perversions. and it doesn't mean it's not against non-majority ways. It's against love, wisdom. It's not it's saying that everybody should act a certain way in terms of clothing or gender identity or sexual preference or things like that. This is not what I'm talking about. We're talking about the nature of the positive path being a commitment to increasing understanding and living in love, wisdom and compassion. That's being degraded, and popular culture is basically trapping all of those who may be self-trapped, self-limited by inadequate wisdom and love, or the unwillingness to face truth and see what's happening in the world. And so I see a further degradation of mental capacity globally among the majority. But that's not those who are positively and negatively oriented. That's those who are not clear about their own, universal morality or the ways of benevolence versus the ways of control. They're unclear about the distinction between love and control. And so there is a
the great unpolarized.
The great Ra said, the vast sinkhole of indifference. Those who care not and know not. And that's fine, they can choose, but if you don't go ahead, you're going to go backwards. If you're not going forward on one's path, either path, you really are, not you, but one is degrading. One is disorganizing. And so there's a much greater mental disorganization in society. Again, this is the revelation of metaphysical conflict or opposition between the two paths of benevolence and malevolence, or the ways of love versus control, or honesty versus self-deception. Because the real problem is self-deception. The reason that people get fooled by others is that we've been self-deceiving. Some people are not surprised, by scandals that come unearthed. Some people were not surprised at all about, revelations of this or that, or, oh my God, my teacher was a scoundrel. Some people were not surprised. Why? Because they saw. Why? Because they were committed to seeing and had rejected self-deception, you know.
Mm.
And so I see a lot more self-deception going on in the information age.
Mm. Scott, the other thing I wanted to pick your brain on is this. Have you encountered this book, UFOs by Leslie Kean?
I think that's an old book, isn't it?
Yes, it's pretty old. I only recently encountered it, and the foreword is by John Podesta.
Oh my God!
Ex chief of staff of the White House. Yeah,
we know who he is.
And you think he's part of the cabal?
Have you heard the word Pizzagate?
I have. I don't know what to think of it.
Well, I would just say look into it, look into it, look into it, look into it, and your soul will tell you what to think of it.
Okay. Yeah, but I thought that was interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're
trying to push it out.
There is some. If you look online, you can see some articles about Podesta and Clinton and UFO disclosure and Robert Bigelow or some Bigelow, sponsor of UFO research or researchers or conferences, where the idea, I think, is that quote disclosure, UFO disclosure, was planned by was planned to occur in a Clinton presidency. That's my sense of that issue. One aspect of that issue. I mean, to me, I wouldn't trust anything that government officials say regarding multidimensional life. It's like the military becomes the spokesman for the ashram. Give me a break, please. And so, to me, they're going to be they're two deceptions. It's called the alien deception. They're two deceptions that will be played in a UFO disclosure quote if it occurs. And Werner von Braun talked about this apparently to Carol Rosin, saying the final boogeyman will be the threat of alien invasion. So there's the false positive and the false negative. The false positive is they're here to save us, just take the chip and join the New World Order. Or the false negative, they're here to invade and destroy us, just take the chip and join the New World Order. Both. Same outcome. Different method or different, manipulative hook. And I think that, the Vatican has a telescope, right? Mount Graham, Arizona, called Lucifer. The Vatican's Lucifer telescope. Did you know that?
Wow.
How about that?
I did not know that.
What a strange name to choose. So are they looking for, the frozen cryogenic, frozen reptilian warriors coming in on the Death Star planet? Are they looking for Nibiru? What the hell's going on? Well, what about underground bases? What about undersea and off-planet bases? What about Gary McKinnon's work? What about Richard Sauder's work? Underground bases, off-planet, undersea. It's all real, it seems to me. You want to get a wake up? Take a look at Richard Sauder's work on underground bases. He has a lot of interviews on SGT Report. You're going to get some hardcore comments on YouTube if we post this. Some people say, "Oh, what a nut job! Oh, he's crazy! Oh, what a freak! Oh my God, never heard such garbage! Oh, it's such bullshit!" Quack quack quack. So
I spent a fair amount of time looking at this kind of stuff, but I don't know what to think of it. I don't know what this. Certainly I have my own intuitions of what's good info and what's not, but at some point, I just want to live my life and,
right, of course,
cook. I want to cook.
Yeah,
and
have a nice
read nice novels and make a good living doing whatever it is that I do.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. It's a very, very ugly social matrix when you penetrate to the hidden.
Yes.
I say there are two matrices. There's the human and the cosmic. And the human matrix of deception hides unspeakable evil and wickedness. And the cosmic matrix hides unspeakable glory and the majesty of an infinite love-based creation.
Mm.
And if you don't go through the first, you probably can't find the second. Or to the extent that you're unwilling to see the first, you won't be able to really appreciate the second. Or you can't, and to the degree you don't go beyond the first, one may get stuck in despair. You know, like David Icke, or people who are stuck in, I don't think he's stuck, but people who may not go on from the conspiratorial aspects of what he's presenting to the spiritual, cosmic, metaphysical. And so many people don't want to understand what's happening on Earth, and then there are those who get stuck in the perfidy of human hidden evil, and yet there's this occurs within a larger space of glory and infinite love, which is the cosmic life, or multidimensional universal life.
Yeah. Do you think Putin is SDO or SDS?
Frankly, I like Putin a lot. I think he's a very moral man. I don't think he's a saint.
Wow.
I don't think he's a saint, but I'm not either. If you look at his address, Christmas 2016, he's talking about morality. He's talking about the primacy of national morality. The reason that they hate Putin, the powers that be hate Putin, is because he stands with God. He tries to stand with God. And he tries to promote Orthodox, non-distorted Christianity.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's against the New World Order. He's against, deceptive globalism. I mean, we are one world, one family, all one, yeah. But there's the manipulation of globalism into, planetary enslavement. And then there's a love-wisdom-based globalism, which is really what's going to happen in fourth density positive in the future in this world. But it won't be run by the same souls, obviously.
Yeah. No, I got a lot of, certainly, I think there's been some good opposition from RT, Russia Today, talking about a lot of very important and pertinent things, and obviously Snowden being allowed asylum in Russia.
Right.
I'm on the whole. Actually, I've been wanting to raise some awareness with John Perkin.
Yes, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, IMF fellow.
Yeah, I like that angle. I also think it's very interesting that he was he got into the shamanic. The dynamic there of the economic rapist of the earth, and then back into the ancestral, the ancient, and the healing, and the sort of more feminine. Yeah, that's a very important healing dynamic that needs to happen.
Well, a statement from the raw material is the physical and the metaphysical are inseparable. And so to understand the hidden or the causal basis of all the negativity on planet Earth, one needs to look into the metaphysical, which is hidden and invisible and more subtle. And there is a war going on. There is a war in heaven as on Earth. And it's not exactly war up there, but it's a conflict and opposition between forces of benevolence and those of malevolence. If you want to see the future that the negative Illuminati and New World Order folks plan for planet Earth, is, from my view, it goes very simply from police state 1984 to transhumanist, mind-controlled Brave New World and Tetragrammaton, all the way up to massive depopulation Oblivion. These are movies that depict the sequence, I think, that is planned. And as far as I know, Earth is scheduled to be a resource extraction planet only. by Orion. But it won't happen.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk freely. We'll see what happens to your computer and the YouTube channel if you post this.
Hey, no, I think it's a good. It will reach the people who they are meant to reach.
Yeah, I mean, these are just ideas. And if people think it's wrong or false or deception or lie, they can reject it, please. So, it's all unprovable.
Absolutely.
It's all unprovable, as far as I can tell. But it's good to contact a wide range of ideas, I think.
I think so. And you should never... Yeah, you should... yeah, I mean, if you're not rational, then you shouldn't be... Anyway, you should be rational, period.
Well, there's a saying, the unexamined life is not worth living. I would say the unexamined life doesn't lead to self-improvement. Or, as you say, rational, logical, analytical are really necessary critical functions of mind for spiritual transformation and help and healing for the world.
Yes.
That's the balance of love and wisdom. Love is the intuitive, and wisdom is the rational analytic. And they're two wings of the bird. They're the two wings of mind. The heart mind. The heart, that's the heart. That's Xin, Chinese tradition. Heart mind. The blue-green center. Fifth ray, fourth ray. That's true transpersonal mind. And it's not a personal quality, but one can open and access those transpersonal qualities of intuition, heart, and logical wisdom, discernment, mind, and join them and blend them, and make a gracious synthesis.
Yes. Scott, really enjoyed catching up with you.
Thank you.